Welcome to the channel. Hit subscribe and dive into stories that'll stay with you long after the video ends. Let's begin. He didn't see her fall. All he heard was the sharp, splintering crack of metal against pavement, followed by a gasp that cut straight through the night air. Daniel froze mid-stride, the grocery bag in his hand swinging once before slipping from his fingers. Oranges rolled across the empty parking lot like startled animals. At the far edge of the lot, beneath a flickering street lamp, a bicycle lay half-crushed, and beside it, a young woman struggled to push herself upright, gripping her arm like it was on fire. Hey, don't move," Daniel called, his voice tighter than he meant. She blinked up at him as he hurried over, her dark hair sticking to her cheek. "I'm fine," she muttered, wincing. "Really, I just hit the curb wrong." But she wasn't fine. He could see the tremor in her jaw, the pale sheen across her forehead. The night was cold enough to sting, but Daniel felt heat rising in his chest, something between panic and disbelief. He'd walked this path for years. Same late-night grocery run, same quiet routine. And yet here she was, as if she had fallen straight into the center of his neatly folded life. When he knelt beside her, she tried to smile, even as pain tugged at the corners of her mouth. "I swear," she said softly, "I didn't mean to cause a scene." "You didn't cause anything," he replied. "Just let me help." She hesitated, then allowed him to support her as she stood. The moment her weight shifted, her breath hitched sharply. "Okay," she whispered. Maybe not completely fine." Light pooled over her face as the street lamp steadied, revealing freckles dusted across her nose, a bruise blooming on her collarbone, and eyes sharp, alert, refusing to show fear even now. "What's your name?" Daniel asked. "Emma." "All right, Emma, can you walk?" "I can try." But her leg buckled the instant she put weight on it. Daniel caught her instinctively, his arms wrapping around her before he could think. She stiffened, surprised, then slowly relaxed into the support. "Sorry," she breathed out. "I didn't mean to. You don't have to apologize." For a moment, the world shrank to the faint hum of a distant highway and her uneven breathing against his shoulder. He guided her to a nearby bench. She sank down, drawing her injured arm close. The bike, twisted at an odd angle, glinted under the street lamp like a broken limb. "What were you doing riding so fast?" he asked gently. Emma stared at the ground. "Long story." He waited, but she didn't continue. Instead, she reached for her backpack, a worn canvas thing patched in places, and pulled it tight against her chest like she feared someone might take it. Daniel's gaze sharpened. Something was off. Not just the fall, not just the stubbornness. It was the way she scanned the shadows, as if expecting someone or something to emerge. "You should go home," she said suddenly. "Really, I'll be okay. I'm not leaving you like this." Her eyes lifted to his, conflicted, grateful, afraid. "I don't want to get you involved," she whispered. "Involved in what?" A car engine growled somewhere beyond the lot, slow, deliberate. Emma flinched. She stood too quickly, wavered, and grabbed Daniel's sleeve. "Please," she said, her voice trembling now. "We have to move now." And just like that, Daniel realized this was no ordinary accident, and Emma was no ordinary girl. Daniel didn't argue. Something in Emma's voice, tight, urgent, cracking at the edges, cut through every instinct he had to ask questions first. He helped her stand, her fingers still locked around his sleeve, and together they slipped into the narrow pedestrian path that curved behind the grocery store. The car engine from the lot rumbled again, louder this time, as if sweeping the rows in slow, predatory arcs. Emma's breath shuddered. "Keep walking, not too fast, don't look back." Daniel swallowed hard and did exactly that. The cold air bit at his throat, and every footstep felt impossibly loud on the concrete. He tried to glance at her without being obvious. Her jaw was clenched. Her injured arm hung useless, and her good hand gripped that patched-up backpack like it held something worth running for. "Emma," he whispered, "are you in danger?" Her answer came after a painfully long beat. "Yes." They rounded the corner behind the store, and for a moment the sounds of the lot muffled. Boxes were stacked beside the loading dock, the air heavy with the scent of wet cardboard. A streetlight buzzed overhead, throwing jittery shadows across their faces. Daniel steadied her as she stumbled. "We should call someone, police, ambulance, anyone." "No." Her refusal was immediate, sharp. "Emma, you're hurt. The people looking for me, some of them are the police." Daniel stopped cold. "What do you mean?" Emma turned toward him, eyes bright with fear and determination. "I didn't do anything wrong, but I saw something I wasn't supposed to, and if they find me, they won't hesitate." The air seemed to shrink around them. Before Daniel could react, headlights washed over the far side of the building. A vehicle turned into the service alley, its tires crunching slowly across the gravel. Emma whimpered under her breath. "We need higher ground, somewhere they can't circle us." Daniel lifted his gaze to the fire escape ladder further down the brick wall. "There," he murmured. "Can you climb?" He added. "Not well," she admitted, then winced as her arm twitched. But when he started toward the ladder, she followed, driven by something stronger than pain. He helped her grab the first rung, bracing her as she pushed herself upward with her good arm. Her breathing grew ragged with each pull. The car engine idled closer. "Faster," she whispered. Daniel climbed right behind her, one hand ready to catch her if she slipped. When they reached the first landing, they pressed flat against the cold metal, peering between the railings. A dark SUV crept into view below, its windows tinted like obsidian. The driver killed the engine, but the headlights stayed on, bleaching the alley in harsh white. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with slow, predatory confidence. He scanned the shadows like he'd done this before, like he knew she couldn't have gotten far. Emma's fingers dug into Daniel's forearm. "That's him." "Who is he?" Daniel whispered. She swallowed, voice a near-silent tremor. "Detective Morrow. He's not here to bring me in, he's here to erase me." Daniel felt his pulse crash against his ribs. The man below stepped closer to the ladder, too close. Emma's voice barely carried. "If he looks up, we're done." And in that suffocating moment, Daniel understood something terrifying. He hadn't just helped a girl who fell off her bike. He'd stepped into someone else's war, and the enemy had already arrived. The metal of the fire escape railing vibrated beneath Daniel's palms as the SUV's headlights swept closer, bleaching the underside of the stairs. Emma held her breath, her fingers gripping the fabric of his jacket so tightly he could feel her pulse through it. Detective Morrow paused directly below. His footsteps stopped. Silence pooled in the alley, thick and unnatural. Then slowly he tilted his head upward. Daniel's lungs froze. Emma's nails bit into his arm. For a heartbeat, the world hung on the pivot of that single motion. But the detective's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, muttered something sharp under his breath, and turned away. He circled back toward the SUV, pacing like a wolf denied the scent. Emma exhaled shakily, her whole body trembling. "We can't stay here," she whispered. "He's sweeping the block. He won't leave until he finds me." Daniel leaned closer. "Then tell me what you saw. I need to understand what I'm protecting you from." Emma's eyes flickered with something like guilt and trust fighting its way up through fear. She wet her lips, looked down at her battered backpack, and nodded. "Okay," she breathed. "But not here." They climbed higher, the fire escape groaning under their weight. At the rooftop edge, Daniel helped her over the final step. The city stretched around them, quiet blocks, dark windows, distant hum of traffic. A thin layer of frost clung to the roof gravel, crunching under their feet. Emma sank down beside a ventilation unit, hugging her knees. Daniel crouched in front of her, giving her space but refusing to look away. She opened the backpack slowly, carefully, like whatever sat inside was fragile or dangerous. "I work at a courthouse downtown," she began. "Just clerical stuff. Filing, transcribing hearings, nothing important." Her voice shook. "But last week I stayed late. One of the conference rooms was supposed to be empty." The wind tugged at her hair as she met his eyes. "It wasn't." Daniel waited. "I heard raised voices. The door was cracked, just a sliver. Inside, Detective Morrow and two officers were arguing with a man I'd seen in the building only once before, a defense attorney." She swallowed hard. They were planning to bury evidence. Evidence that would have freed a guy who'd been locked up for 6 years. Daniel blinked. Why would they? Because proving his innocence meant exposing their corruption. They framed him, Daniel, and the attorney had documents, files that proved it. He brought them to negotiate. Her voice grew small. He didn't walk out. A cold weight dropped into Daniel's stomach. "You saw the whole thing?" Emma nodded slowly. "They didn't know I was there, but I panicked and ran." The next morning, the attorney's death was ruled a suicide. The man they framed, still in prison. And I copied part of the case file before I fled. She opened her backpack. Inside, wrapped in a scarf, lay a thin stack of papers and a small flash drive. "They'll risk anything to keep this buried," she whispered. "And they know someone stole a copy. They just don't know it's me yet." A door slammed below, loud, abrupt. Emma flinched violently. Daniel stood and peered over the edge just as Morrow stepped back out of the SUV. He scanned the rooftops this time. He's checking the upper levels, Daniel murmured. Emma's breath broke. We have to keep moving. The detective began walking toward the fire escape, step by step, upward. No hesitation, no doubt. He was coming straight for them. Daniel's pulse hammered so loudly he was certain Emma could hear it. The metal rungs of the fire escape clanged softly as Detective Morrow began his ascent, each step echoing up the brick walls like a countdown. Emma clutched the backpack to her chest. He's not going to stop, she whispered. Daniel scanned the rooftop. We can't outrun him on open ground. We need cover somewhere he can't see us right away. The roof stretched wide and flat, broken only by ventilation units and a row of large industrial HVAC boxes near the far edge. Daniel grabbed her hand, not a tentative gesture, not polite but firm, decisive, and guided her toward them. She limped, pain bending her forward, but she didn't protest. Behind them, the creak of the fire escape grew louder. Morrow was climbing faster. Move, Daniel urged gently but urgently. They slipped behind the largest HVAC unit, pressing into the narrow space between its metal wall and the low parapet. Shadows swallowed them whole. Emma leaned her head back against the cold steel, shutting her eyes for a moment. I didn't mean for you to get dragged into this. Daniel didn't look away from the fire escape. Too late, and I'm not leaving you. Her breath caught, surprised, grateful, afraid all at once, but she said nothing. The detective reached the rooftop. His silhouette rose like a dark monolith against the night sky, broad shoulders, thick coat, a methodical stillness that made the air feel heavier. He scanned the space, hand resting casually near the gun at his hip. Emma, he called, voice low and resonant. You're hurt. You won't get far. Let's end this before someone else gets involved. Emma tensed, fingers knotted in the fabric of her backpack. Morrow stepped forward, boots grinding against frost. You don't know what you're carrying, he continued, voice deceptively calm. Those files won't help the man in prison. He's already gone. It's over for him, and it'll be over for you too if you keep running. Daniel clenched his jaw. Gone. The word struck him like a blow. He looked at Emma, but she shook her head fiercely, tears welling. He's lying, she mouthed. Morrow walked further across the rooftop, pausing near the ventilation units, listening for movement. Daniel held his breath. The detective turned his head slightly, eyes narrowing like he could sense the tremble in the air. Then, without warning, Emma's pocket buzzed. The tiny vibration sounded deafening. Daniel's heart stopped. Emma froze, her hand snapping to silence her phone through the fabric, but the moment was already lost. Morrow's head whipped toward their hiding spot, his posture sharpened. There you are, he murmured. Footsteps thundered across the roof. Daniel grabbed Emma's uninjured arm. Go, now. They shot out from behind the HVAC unit, racing toward the opposite side of the roof. Emma stumbled but kept pace, breath ragged. Morrow shouted behind them, the scrape of metal suggesting he'd drawn his weapon. Daniel, Emma gasped, we're cornered. Not yet. At the far edge of the rooftop, a narrow maintenance platform jutted out over the alley. Beneath it, a rusted ladder descended to the neighboring building, shorter, older, but reachable. Daniel grabbed the ladder, testing its weight. Careful. Keep your foot centered. Emma swung onto the top rung just as a gunshot cracked through the night. The metal railing beside her sparked violently. She screamed, clinging to Daniel. He shielded her with his body as fragments of shattered concrete rained down. Go, Emma, he yelled. Trembling, she started climbing down the ladder while Daniel positioned himself above her, blocking Morrow's line of sight. Another shot rang out, closer this time. Daniel jerked. Breath knocked from his lungs, but he didn't let go. Emma reached the midway point of the ladder, crying out for him. Daniel, come on, please. He braced himself, preparing to descend after her, but Morrow reached the edge of the roof, gun raised, eyes locked on them. And Daniel realized too late that the detective now had the perfect angle. The world slowed into a single, breathless moment. Morrow's gun leveled. The metal glinted under the rooftop lights, perfectly still, perfectly certain. Daniel felt the cold bite of the night air on the back of his neck, the sting of gravel under his palms, the faint vibration of the ladder where Emma clung below him, terrified, helpless, calling his name. He didn't think. He moved. Daniel released the edge of the rooftop and dropped onto the ladder, the rung groaning under his weight. A shot exploded above. Stone erupted where his head had been half a second earlier. Emma screamed, reaching upward like she could pull him down faster. Daniel, hurry, hurry. He descended fast, almost sliding, hands burning as they gripped the rusted sides. Emma backed down, her injured leg trembling violently. Morrow cursed above them, sprinting to follow their path, his boots gouging against the roofing. They hit the small landing of the next building, Daniel first, then Emma collapsing into his arms. He steadied her and pulled her toward a narrow maintenance door. He expected it to be locked. It wasn't. They slipped inside, darkness swallowing them whole. Daniel eased the door shut and turned the simple latch, his breath fogging the cold air of the stairwell. Emma leaned against the wall, clutching her side. "We can't keep climbing down rooftops," she whispered. "He'll catch us eventually." Daniel listened. Footsteps scraped lightly outside, Morrow testing the door. The latch rattled, then stilled. Emma shivered. "He's going around. He'll try to get in from below." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then we get out before he does." They hurried down the stairwell, spiraling lower and lower until they burst into an empty warehouse-level corridor. Tall windows lined one side, their panes frost-covered. A draft filtered in through a cracked frame, carrying the distant wail of a siren. Daniel helped Emma to the far end of the hall where a loading bay door stood half-latched. Through the narrow gap he could see the street, quiet, dim, deserted. "We can make it," he said. "Once we hit the street, we get to my car. It's 5 blocks." Emma's voice was tiny. "And then what? Where do we go? What do we do with the evidence?" Daniel hesitated because until that moment he hadn't dared think that far ahead, but the answer came with surprising clarity. "We expose them," he said. "We take it somewhere safe, someone who can't be bought." Emma stared up at him, wide-eyed, trembling. "Why are you doing this for me? You don't even know me." Daniel tightened his grip on her hand. "I know enough." Before she could respond, stairwell door above them burst open. Footsteps thundered onto the landing. Morrow's voice echoed down the hall. "Emma, I'm giving you one more chance." Emma's breath hitched. Daniel lifted the loading bay door just enough for her to slip under, then crawled through after her. He took her hand, and together they fled into the alley, running on sheer willpower. They made it 2 blocks before Emma stumbled, her leg giving out. Daniel caught her, but she sagged heavily against him, face pale, eyes losing focus. "Daniel," she whispered, I can't. You can, stay with me." He lifted her, pulling her close, carrying her as the streetlights blurred above them. "Just hold on." She pressed her forehead to his chest. "If anything happens, take the files. Don't let him bury the truth." "Nothing's happening to you," Daniel said fiercely. "Not while I'm here." A car engine roared around the corner, headlights flashed. For an instant, Daniel tensed, expecting Morrow. But it wasn't the SUV. It was a patrol car. 2 officers stepped out, hands raised, not threatening but cautious. "We got an anonymous tip," one said. "Someone's been hurt. Are you Emma Calder?" Emma froze, confused. I didn't call anyone." The second officer offered a gentle, almost relieved smile. "The tip came from inside the precinct, someone who said you'd need backup." Emma's eyes widened. Daniel felt her grip tighten. Behind them, distant shouting erupted. Morrow realizing too late that he'd lost the trail. For the first time that night, Emma's face cracked with hope. Daniel exhaled, his arms still around her, holding her up against the cold and the fear and everything they'd survived. "Emma," he said softly, "you're safe now." And as the officers guided them into the waiting car, sirens rising, the truth finally finding its way into the light, Emma looked at him with something deeper than gratitude, something that began on a cold night beside a broken bicycle and changed them both forever. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the channel for more real-life stories like this.